Thank you for tuning into this online-only edition of Back to School, a new path forward for CCSD. I'm Brian Loftus. This June, Dr. Jesus Jara took over as Clark County School District's new leader. Just recently, he stopped by our station to discuss some of his priorities and goals for the upcoming school year. For our viewers that are just welcoming you to town, what are your impressions coming from Florida to now make Las Vegas your home? How has the town welcomed you? How has it felt?
Well, you know, it's been great. The heat has been phenomenal. I just got to tell you. No, I'm kidding. You know, it just the community has been, to me, it's one of the highlights. The investment that I feel and the passion for our kids is unmatched, and that's one of the exciting pieces for me, from support staff, from teachers, from principals, community leaders, business leaders. Everybody in this community is really excited and hopeful that, you know, we can really be, as I mentioned, the #1 district for kids.
I was going to say, first, though, if you can roll with this heat, you can roll with anything. You're ready for anything. But let's talk a little bit about you. You working at a large urban district in Orlando, Florida, now coming here to Las Vegas. What maybe is one or two educational philosophies you bring with you all these years in education? Well,
you know, it's really the servant leadership. For me, is one of the things that is critical. And the district office is really to support schools. And that's one of the things that I found exciting about Clark County, is really the decentralization. And really giving a lot of decision making at the school level, which is really where it needs to happen with the classroom teacher and the principal. So one of the things that you know, it's exciting is the opportunity to be able to support our teachers and our principals, because we had a very similar model. Not legislative, but something that we felt was important in the 9th largest. I came from, we had about 209,000 students in Orlando. So the jump to 322,000, you know, it's just more zeros and more children in schools, but it's just really being able to provide that customer service to our schools from the district office is critical, and one of my philosophies as a servant leader.
And you have had that big district experience, as you point out. When you're driving home from work after what I know is a long day, because you're putting in some hours, do you have one or two hopes or goals for maybe the first 90 days or first 6 months or a year? Do you have something that stands out?
I do. When you really start looking at the work that we have been able to actually in this school district, since you know, some of the outcomes that they've had, the graduation rate, the NAEP scores that came out, is then how do we accelerate, right? Because we need to continue moving forward. So as I drive home and think about some of these things, there's a few key components, really, and from what I'm hearing from the community, the transparency. We really need to be transparent about what we're doing in the school system with our overall community. That's one of the things. The other piece is really equity, and the opportunity for all children to really receive that high, rigorous opportunity to high quality instruction in every classroom every single day.
That's what parents can hope for their kids. Now, we talked a little bit about the NAEP scores, and I want to get to those positives, but let's get into some of the meat and potatoes of what the challenges have been for the district. 320,000 students, 33,000 employees, and so many viewers talk to us about the budget deficit, $68 million, 563 teacher positions lost. It is something that you're walking into, and it's a mountain of a problem, but I know you need to kind of take it in bites. How do you handle it, and what can you tell concerned parents that are viewers about the budget deficit and fixing it?
Well, you know, fixing it, and one of the things that when you start looking at it is what I want to tell the viewers and the parents is that our children are going to be the #1 focus for us, right? Our kids are going to come to school August 13th. With our budget challenges, and that's something that we need to prioritize. One of the things that they need to be very clear is that we're really taking a close look at everything within our internal, right? We have to get our the stability of our internal budget and our system up in shape, and that's some of the things that have been going on and will continue to do that. The other piece is really start having conversations about the funding, right? What is that? What is the state? And what is that possibility, the possibility to look at increasing the revenue? But before we do that is to really have that clear understanding of what our internal budget and the confidence from our parents, from the state legislature and the governor to know that, hey, we are taking care of the internal house, and then start going to to the Carson City to start saying we need more funding so we can continue accelerating and provide a high-quality education. One of the things that I'm going to commit, and as I've said to the board and to this community, is we're going to set some metrics so we can really accelerate the opportunities and hold me accountable. You know, I believe strongly in accountability, and that's one of the things that I expect for this community. I know the trustees and the community will hold me accountable for success.
You mentioned going to Carson City looking for ways to increase revenue. When you are done with your full assessment of the new funding formula, do you believe it can work?
Well, let me say this, and I've had this conversation with the state superintendent, multiple conversations. We think that that needs to be modernized. From where we sit, we've seen 17. I believe there's been 17 reports in the history of the funding formula, and they all say the same thing. It needs to be modernized to 2018, 2019, and that's one of the things that we're really excited that we need to start having that conversation around. So what does that funding formula look like? So it's equitable across the entire state, and we're willing to have that conversation.
Sitting down and talking with you today, I did the same thing a number of times with Pat Skorkowski, and I asked him recently when interviewing him what advice he would impart to you. He said the following: some of the biggest challenges will be trying to bring everybody together before the legislative session, so I'm trying to work to make sure he, Dr. Jara, gets to meet the right people quickly so that he can establish those relationships. Has that been happening, and do you feel that advice is being heeded?
Well, you know what, and we've had conversations even before I got here. You know, we were talking about the legislative platform and really looking at where we were going and had discussions before he left. In my 2-week transition, we had really good conversations about what the future for us to be ready. And that was very helpful. We had, you know, made some great introductions, and then start looking at internally what that would look like in our overall team. And one of the things that we've had discussions with our board is really looking at a comprehensive approach to get community leaders aligned with our vision and our ask moving forward.
We wanted to open this up to our viewers as well, who are just getting to know you, Dr. Jara, and so we asked if viewers of 8 News Now had any questions. Amy wrote in, and Amy writes, my main concern is the marijuana tax money being in a rainy day fund. Seems to me that the rainy day is now. For those not familiar, Amy referencing the 15% excise tax. What would you say to Amy regarding her question about marijuana money?
Well, you know what? One of the things that we need to look at is really that we need to make sure that it stays within education. We see that there's a great need in our school system. So those are some of the conversations that we need to have in Carson City, is how does that fit into our overall budget ask moving forward. So it's a great question, and it's something that we certainly need to have that conversation with our leaders in the state.
So the conversation moves forward on that issue. Katie wants to know, classroom sizes are too big, even with the classroom size reduction. When is there going to be a new middle school bill? There are many new elementary schools built recently, but not any new middle schools for all of these students. For those that are concerned their son or daughters are in classes that are too large, and even wonder, as Katie points out, about more schools, what would you say to Katie?
Well, you know, I'll say, Katie, you know, I actually just came from meeting with a group of principals that had the same concern, is really looking at. So it's how do we start looking at as a whole is not only the modernizing the funding formula, but when you really start looking at as a district, you know, getting the funding that we get from the state. I believe that in some cases we need to really start looking at the overall base, but then also looking at moving away from some of the categoricals, if you will, because it's an opportunity for us to then look at where the money is going to help the schools, whether it's hiring more teachers or co-teaching, so then we can strive to really try to lower the class size for our students.
I imagine 5 weeks into this, there must be so much information you're trying to digest quickly. We're going to keep the questions coming, though. Lola wants to know, and this question surprised me a little bit, because in terms of gender diversity, we reported here at Channel 8, those were really well-attended meetings with a lot of very enthusiastic people. But Lola writes, the gender diversity issue is irrelevant, she says. Less than 1% of the population has gender identity issues. There is no reason to spend time and money on this. Those are Lola's words. What would you say to Lola about time and money being spent on gender identity issues?
Well, I'll say this. When you really start looking at 322,000 kids, you look at all children. We need to provide a great education for all kids, whether it's 1%, 30%, 40%. And one of the things that, you know, as our board has been really doing a great job in studying, spending time and effort with community overall. I believe it's been over a year to really get to a policy to follow the law, you know, because this is something that the state, as a law change, that our board officers, who are constitutional officers, need to really obey. So it's to me, is how do we keep all children free from learning and having a great education in our schools?
It's one of the things you said in your first answer was this is about every student in CCSD, and so that helps answer Lola's question. Tougher topic, school safety, as well as, sadly, the school shootings that have happened throughout the country. What do you do as our leader on an issue that, frankly, was not an issue when you and I were in school? How do you tackle it? How do you approach it and keep kids safe?
Well, you know, safety is our top priority. We all know that because, you know, when we send our kids, when I send my kids to school, when, you know, it's really make sure that they're safe. So I want the public to know that that is one of our top priorities. One of the things that when you start really looking at the situation to maintain our safe schools, looking at the governor's you know, task force and some of their recommendations, we need to look at how we address some of the safety issues and try to limit the entry points into schools. But the other thing is one of the things that to me are very critical, where we really need to invest in time and effort, is really the mental health opportunities for our kids, where we have more adults on campus to really help all kids. And that's, to me, last week I was on a panel and the kids had great suggestions. You know, we have an opportunity to build a culture that makes sure that all our children are safe.
You make an interesting point about entry points, because we were just reporting actually about Cheyenne High School and the possibility of metal detectors. Do you ever foresee that as a valley-wide initiative or a district-wide initiative, or would that be a case-by-case basis?
Well, you know, I 36 days in.
Yes.
These are some of the decisions that happen, and that's one of the things that I'm studying to really look at the decision points. But again, what I'll tell you is really the culture of the school, the need, and something that we will have to study.
Let's talk about some positives. In my own research into CCSD, AP courses, top of the food chain, AP pass rates, NAEP scores, which you mentioned, are up. And I don't know if a lot of Valley residents know this, but we've talked about this in What's Cool at School. The Fine Arts program, Music and Arts, is 19 years in a row best community for music and arts education. So there's a lot of positives happening within CCSD. In your 5 weeks here, what has really blown you away where you went, this is phenomenal, and I want to keep this going and even improve it?
Well, absolutely, and thank you for that. I mean, that's the thing that we need to continue to communicate. There's great things with great educators, a great team, things that are happening for our kids that, you know, I tell you, the music program, phenomenal, you know, probably the best in the country. The advanced placement, you know, the growth that we've had here for the last couple of years, the graduation rate, to me is a combination. What I will tell you is one of the things that I'm excited about is really continuing that trajectory, to continue to accelerate, because we have plenty of kids. We have a lot of kids that are very capable of completing college level work. And that's one of the things that we need to really make sure that members of this community understand. These are, when they pass an advanced placement, that's a college credit. That is saving in their pocket at home. So our kids are performing at the highest level, and very, very proud and looking forward to accelerating the opportunity for students.
Showing up on college campus with already having credit from their work in CCSD. That's important. Socioeconomic status, of course, very different for each student from one to the next. How do you close the opportunity gap?
Well, I'm going to tell you one of the things that you'll get to know about me and really where we're going, to me, is where every student in every zip code should have the great opportunity to a high quality education, right? So that's one of the things that will continue to accelerate, where all kids, no matter their zip code, they're going to be able to perform at high levels. And that's where my team and the team that's here is going to be able to do. It's providing this rigorous opportunity where they're performing in the arts, looking at why do we have chess clubs across all our schools? Mm-hmm. Do we have this, the same opportunities for all kids? So where they're engaged, I want them to be able to perform. And to me, poverty shouldn't be a barrier.
Read by 3, students reading by 3rd grade, the literacy test, less than half passed. Moving forward, are you concerned at all about implementing that when at the present time only half the students have been able to pass?
Well, I have a little bit of experience coming from Florida, because that's one of the things that that we had to go through in some of the challenges. And one of the things that we were, and it's part of the conversation we're having with our government relations team and our strategies, and how do we then put some support systems, if you will, so our kids, just because if they don't perform well on one test, mm-hmm. and that's one of the things that we need to really look at, is it's one test, one point in time, that maybe there's opportunities where there's some good cause exceptions where students can come to summer school, and then we can give them some other battery of assessments or opportunities for a portfolio. Those are some of the things that then where our kids can find other ways to show mastery, and that's what I'm willing to and really to look at, to come through an approach to help us solve some of the issues that we can see with a read by 3.
To reduce the chance
Absolutely.
That it would be all about that one
Correct.
test. The DOE findings that the district allocates teacher salaries can hurt schools in poorer neighborhoods because it does not account for differences in schools. How do you find that balance? And I know it's challenging, between teacher salaries and funding schools and students. It's very complex. How do you achieve that balance?
Well, I'm going to tell you, and when I saw that report, I looked at it and read through it and said, mm-hmm. First of all, that's a national issue.
Yes.
That's not a Clark County issue. That is just an issue that is across this country. So the exciting piece is now we have some accountability and really work with the Department of Education, the legislature, the governor's office to really try to address that, to then find ways to incentivize teachers to then go into some of our neediest schools. And the exciting piece is that it's documented. And now how do we partner with our teachers union and the legislature to address a problem that is across the country, an issue for some of our challenging schools.
You have worked as a deputy superintendent, as a superintendent. If you were to look down the road 5, 10 years, and you were to have achieved your goals here, what would that look like?
Where every kid is learning and performing at high levels.
This is going to be the easy part. Let's talk a little bit more about you. Again, our community is just getting to know you. I know you went to University of Massachusetts Amherst. I know we were just talking off air, the fact that you were a high school teacher. What, as an educator, is something that you tried to achieve when you were back in the classroom, which it's a very, very tough yet rewarding job. What was the experience for you?
Well, it was a great experience. And actually, when I started teaching, I was a bilingual teacher. Mm-hmm. And seeing kids coming in into my campus, into my classroom, not my campus, coming into my classroom, a lot of, reminded of who I was. Because I came to this country from Venezuela when I was 10 years old. I didn't speak English. And that's what I see. I see a lot of the kids that I was teaching when I was coming in. Obviously, a little bit older, I was a high school teacher. And that's what, just really excited me about education. And that's what I see here. I see a lot of the kids that had some of the same struggles that I had growing up. My mom's 6th grade education. But believe that public school was a great equalizer. And to me, that's what drives me every single day to come to work and then go home energized to come back the next day.
The fact you came here from Venezuela at the age of 10, does that lend a greater empathy for students that are going through that same experience, maybe coming from another country, maybe speaking English as a second language? Do you get them? Do you get their story?
Oh, I do. And that's the piece that, some of the things that they have to learn. Mm-hmm. They have to learn the American education system and parents. And when I see and hear from parents that they're not engaged but it's not because they don't want to, it's because they don't know. And that's why we as the adults have to be relentless about bringing them in, because my parents weren't involved just because they just didn't know. So it provides that opportunity, and also for me to then start having the conversations with the adults so they can understand some of the challenges that our kids are facing. You know, I go back to when I was in 4th grade. What was Halloween about, right? I mean, I'm asking my dad, I said, hey, you go get candy at night? Not something we did in Venezuela. And so as he was explaining, I said, okay, well, I want to do it. He goes, no, you didn't do that last year, were you? So you're not doing it. But some of the things that we take for granted, some of our kids have to experience. And then, you know, and then in schools, we have to help them understand and bring them into our American culture.
You mean I just knock on their door and I get candy?
Exactly.
I love this country. We always ask a community leader what more you can do. What can we as a community do? What can we do to support Clark County School District in its path forward?
You know, I'm going to come and get involved. You know, my message is, you know, there's 33,000 employees, there's 322,000 students. There's more of them than us. So I need every community member that has bring their talent, their treasure, their support to help us. Because I think that we are the economic engine of this entire community.
Well said. I remember moving here a decade ago. People said, oh, you're moving to Las Vegas. They think you're going to like live in a casino or something.
Right.
You moved here from Florida. What are your impressions of this city in Las Vegas? What have you really enjoyed about it thus far? We know you mentioned the heat earlier. What else about Las Vegas?
You know, the community. You know, the mountains are great. There's no mountains in Florida. So you drive to work, you see the beautiful mountains. You know, just the entire atmosphere. The restaurants are phenomenal.
They sure are.
You know, so I just got to try to stay away from them, eat a little bit more at home, not to spend too much time out and about. But it's really the culture and what I see in the investment in this community for our children.
And what are you, and we'll finish off with this, when you look for, again, you're only 36 days in, when you look at your first year, we know what some of your goals are. What are you most excited about within the capacity of your job and making an impact on the district and the community?
You know, when I look at in totality, our adults, you know, what excites me the most is that I can bring everybody together as one team with one goal for our kids.
Well said. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, Dr. Jara.
Absolutely.
We wish you the absolute best in the path forward, and thanks for being a part of our Back to School special.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
As we briefly mentioned in that interview, 4 new elementary schools will be opening their doors to students for the first time on August 13th. These schools are located in some of the Valley's fastest growing areas that are dealing with serious overcrowding issues. The hope is that these new schools will help to alleviate some of those growing pains. Kenneth Divich Elementary is located in the Northwest Valley near Farm and Hualapai. Dennis Ortwine Elementary and Robert and Sandy Ellis Elementary can be found in the southern part of the valley. And Shirley A. Barber is opening up shop in the southeast. Sally Jaramillo gives us a look inside.
When we first moved about 8 years ago, we heard of all the stuff that was going to be here. 8 years passed and it's finally here.
It's a principal's dream, to be honest with you, to open up a brand new school.
Parents and school staff are excited about the new changes this school year will bring. 4 new elementary schools opening this August, each one looking to accommodate a total of 850 students. Tracy Holloway, principal at Dennis Ortwine Elementary School, says the school will be bigger and better than others.
The physical aspect of it, 2 stories, 3 buildings, cutting edge opportunities for technology, everything's brand new.
The developments for these schools started last year with a total budget of $24 million. Each elementary school will have 53 classrooms, including 2 flex classrooms, 1 STEM, a library, art room, and several other amenities.
We're really trying to build 21st century learners. So our students are very technology savvy, and so in order to keep them engaged, we have to kind of rethink the way that we operate schools.
These schools will provide opportunities for music, sports, computer coding, science, and technology. Aside from that, after-school programs where students can learn computer skills. For Noemi Ortiz, having these schools is a dream come true.
Well, not taking a bus, first of all. The buses aren't reliable most of the time. and it's within walking distance.
Not to mention more teachers and more activities for kids.
I think it's our responsibility to close the opportunity gap and raise achievement. And I think that technology is the way that we're going to be able to do that.
Sally Jaramillo, 8 News Now.
In Laughlin, the community has been asking for a new elementary school for years. But when nothing changed, they decided to try and make those changes on their own. John Langler explains.
So this is our area. The kids can come out from their classrooms and sit in the dirt.
Cheryl Crow's sarcasm disguises the truth. When Laughlin's 4th and 5th graders have recess, this is usually where they play. There isn't much.
When I was 9 or 10, I didn't particularly enjoy just sitting in the dirt.
It's a patch of land on the Laughlin Junior and Senior High School campus. Last year, 4th and 5th grade students started taking class here, and the arrangement worked out well. All that's missing is a playground. Crow is on the school organization team and a vocal community leader.
We've reached out to people that make their money in Laughlin to donate to this Laughlin project.
And they have.
And they have done it. The county has given us not one nickel.
It worked. Crow says $30,000 was raised from local businesses. This rough idea was drawn up of what the playground would look like. But now Crow says red tape has gotten in the way.
They're just dragging everything out.
It's a frustrating delay from a district Crow says doesn't give Laughlin much.
With all the schools being built in the valley, and because we don't have the huge numbers they have, our kids aren't as important.
Laughlin's 4th and 5th graders used to go here, Bennett Elementary. It's an older campus, mostly portable classrooms covered in stucco. Infrastructure problems are persistent. The lack of a replacement from CCSD forced Principal Dawn Estes to move the students to the high school campus last year.
I do feel that somewhere along the line, Laughlin was forgotten. I just feel that my students deserve the same facility that any student in Clark County deserves. And it goes sometimes beyond a playground.
Principal Estes says the playground delays involve insurance and other permitting issues, nothing unusual. But if things aren't sorted out soon, Laughlin could lose a key grant that would help pay for the project. And once again, the rural community would be left behind.
They don't need to sit in the dirt in a Clark County school because there's nothing for them to do.
John Langler, 8 News Now.
There will be roughly 500 students at Laughlin High this school year. It could be 6 more months before playground construction can begin. Well, with new schools come new jobs, and right now CCSD has about 540 teacher vacancies. That's a little higher than the same time last year, but educators are currently making their way through the hiring process, and it doesn't stop on the first day of school.
We typically hire about 400 teachers right after school starts. Well, certainly we hope to get that number of shortages down. We want to make sure that we have a quality teacher in every classroom.
CCSD has had to get creative. In addition to seeking out teachers at college fairs and through social media, they have also just recruited more than 100 teachers from the Philippines. The school district pay first-year teachers about $40,000. With the first day of school just over a week away, time is running out to get your kids vaccinated. 8 News Now reporter Orko Manna breaks down what you need to know.
Jara Santiago is not a fan of shots.
I was scared. I was about to cry there.
But after overcoming that initial fear, she says it's worth it.
I'm happy to get these because now I'm okay and I can be healthy.
Jara will be in 7th grade, and she and her classmates need to get certain vaccines before the start of the school year. That includes the newer requirement of a meningitis shot. Other required shots vary by grade level.
You avoid sickness, contagiousness, and for her health. It's perfect for her to get those shots for her to avoid all that.
Just look at Mama. Take a deep breath.
Students who do not have their shots by the first day of class will be sent home. If you're new to town, look up Nevada's requirements.
Nevada is requiring hepatitis A. Some states don't require hepatitis A, so you might, the parent might want to check their shot record just to make sure that they have all the vaccines.
And don't wait until the last minute.
We'll just get busier and busier as we get closer to school, so I encourage everybody to come down now.
The Southern Nevada Health District says they will not turn you away if you cannot afford the vaccines. They say getting these shots is just that important. Most vaccines are covered by health insurance. There's an admit fee, but if you can't afford it, it'll be waived, like it was for Jara.
It's something important, like doctors that don't discriminate anyone who don't have the resources to get shots.
Since I already have everything like shots and like that, She doesn't have to worry about me now because I know she worries about us a lot.
No worries for the new school year. Orko Manna, 8 News Now.
The Southern Nevada Health District is holding a back-to-school health fair next Sunday, August 11th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's going to do it for this online-only edition of Back to School, a new path forward for CCSD. If you haven't had a chance to watch our on-air version, we have also posted that right here on our website, LasVegasNow.com. Have a great night.